a good old-fashioned establishment stitch-up, and that's what it feels like.
Obviously, he's very disappointed, as anyone would be if they lose a long and prolonged court battle. And secondly, he's always angry, and so he's sort of doing what he does so often, which is to blame other people. Everybody seems to be against him. He's in the right, everybody else is in the wrong.
I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff.
It's very sad because it didn't have to be like this at all. I mean, absolutely didn't. And, I think it's a shame to vent that sort of feeling, but that is what they do the whole time. They're always telling us what they think and what they feel and telling us that we're in the wrong and they're in the right. Basically, that's what he's trying to do. I mean, he also says that, he isn't in touch with his father, the king. Well, I don't know why that is. I mean, whether he has tried, or I always understood that the king had left the door wide open for him. But I think it needs a little bit of effort on both sides. And as far as I could see, the king's been very reasonable and hasn't responded to any of the jibes against him. And I'm sure he won't respond to this. But, it's always Prince Harry complaining about other people, which is not very attractive, really.
I actually couldn't believe it. I thought with all the disagreements and all of the chaos that's happening, the one thing that I could rely on is my family keeping me safe.
I didn't think that he was going to win this case at the end, and sadly, he spent an awful lot of money trying to prove this because, to be quite honest, taxpayers' money shouldn't be spent securing, people like him who are not actually working members of the royal family or contributing anything to national life. And quite a lot of the times when he would come over, for example, the Jubilee or the Queen's funeral, of course, he would be with the other members of the royal family, so he would be perfectly well protected. And do you see what I mean? He would be in the wider security blanket covering all of them. So it's a pity. He's then given an interview in which he says this means that he can't come to this country. Well, he can come to this country. He can do whatever he likes, but I don't really see why the taxpayer should have to pay for it. That's the problem. To be quite honest, if you add up what he's probably spent on this court case, he could have paid for his own security. I mean, he must presumably do that out in California. It's really not fair that we should have to pay for it because I could well see that there'd be a lot of criticism from the general public at having to pay security for somebody who's basically out in America earning a lot of money independently and not actually contributing anything to British life at all. He wants to attribute blame to everybody else. I mean, he never seems to accept that, that he himself has done quite a few things which, on the whole, we don't really like. I mean, if I'm looking at it historically, the Duke of Windsor never had any security when he came to this country after he abdicated. And I mean, he'd actually even been a king, but he didn't complain about it. He just got on with it. He sorted himself out. It is, of course, a pity. I mean, okay, so Prince Harry is a member of the royal family. That is why we're talking about him. He will indeed always be a member of the royal family. He has that, if you like, what you probably call a stigma in a sense, but he's got that. But other members of the royal family, the York princesses, they don't get security. Quite a lot of the minor members of the royal family, they only get security from time to time. They don't have the same sort of security that they used to have. And it's very expensive doing that. And it really should be reserved for people who are putting something into British life rather than putting nothing in at all. That's the problem, I think. So, okay, he's probably been caught in an angry mood just after the court case, but I think it's a pity he does this interview. He should have just kept quiet and maybe thought a little bit more carefully about what he actually wanted to say, because what he'll have done by doing this interview is put a lot of things out into the public domain, which people like you and me will then discuss, I suppose.
Of course, some members of my family will never forgive me for writing a book. Of course, they will never forgive me for lots of things.
He doesn't show any wish to come back. I think he's actually expressed that. I mean, he claims to be very content with his life out in California. To my mind, he doesn't look very happy. I've certainly said that before. I feel rather sorry for him. I think he's sort of trapped in a rather strange and difficult situation. But it's not going to help by trying to blame everybody else. I mean, and there have been times in the past where he's been saying, I can't do this because I need to get the royal family must apologize to me. Actually, I'm sorry, it should really be the other way around. He should apologize to them. I'm trying to be logical about this. I think sometimes there's a trigger reaction. I mean, the fact that he's given an interview means that he must have been prepared to do this. I mean, and he's prepared to welcome the cameras in very quickly afterwards and sound off. I mean, it just seems to me rather ill thought out. And usually, it's better in life to say nothing, and then things sort of do tend to move on a bit. But to say that, you know, that the whole world is sort of against him, and that that it's just not like that. I mean, he has given interviews in which he has greatly criticized the royal family. He's written a book which was quite unpleasant about his brother and his father and other members of the family. He's got to take some responsibility for that, I think.
I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious.
It's always possible to reconcile if both sides are prepared to sit down and discuss things. And stranger things have happened. I'm sure he feels isolated, and I suspect that he feels probably increasingly isolated in this present situation, because you see her doing her own thing, and he's just a sort of appendage in the background. His Centre Bali charity has gone wrong. His Invictus Games charity is all right at the moment, but once again, she kind of leaps onto the stage and hogs the headlines when he's introducing it, and sort of the things that he was trained for and the things that he was good at, he doesn't do very much of that anymore, which is a great pity. So if he wants to reconcile, he needs to be very calm about it, and then certainly I would suggest reconciliation on both sides is probably better done in private than in BBC interviews.